Hello, everyone, and welcome for today. I think we'll still be getting a few more speakers in here, but a few more participants in here, but might as well just start us off. Thank you, first of all, for joining our webinar today, and thank you for coming. My name is Michelle Gordon. I'm a senior consultant at Nordic Sustainability, and we're your host for today's webinar on the EU's proposed eco-design for sustainable products regulation. So to start us off today, just to let you know, we've wanted to bring in here today some various speakers that really have different areas of expertise in circular economy and eco-design. Besides just hearing from us, we thought we wanted to really start the conversation around this new and developing policy area by bringing in a variety of different perspectives, both from a deep understanding of policy, but also corporate strategic perspective, and those that have really hands-on experience in product design and development. And I couldn't think of any better speakers to fulfill those roles than who we have joining us here today. So to start us off on the agenda, I'll just give you a very brief introduction before we jump into an introduction of the policy area by Jean-Pierre Schweitzer, who's a senior policy officer for circular economy and product policy at the European Environmental Bureau. Then we'll be getting into our panel discussion, where Jean-Pierre will be joined by our two other speakers today. We'll be having Thjis Maartens, the Sustainability and Circular Economy Lead at Philips, as well as Mette Bak-Andersen, who's a designer, researcher, and sustainability advisor and author. And our fantastic panelists today will be speaking about the question of how they think the EU's proposed eco-design for sustainable products regulation could impact the way that companies approach their strategy and business models, how products are actually being developed, and finally, they'll also address how they think companies should prepare. And finally, we will have an open Q&A. So please do, throughout these presentations, just don't hesitate to add your questions into the Q&A panel, and we'll get to those at the end. So just put those in there as they come up, and not in the chat, directly in the Q&A panel. So just to briefly let you know about us, the host at Nordic Sustainability, and why we brought you here today. We're a consultancy based in Copenhagen, Denmark, and we work at the intersection of strategy and sustainability. And we aim to help our clients gain a competitive advantage by acting within the planetary boundaries. So we help companies set a baseline by understanding their environmental impacts, and then work with them to develop strategies and targets, and then actually help them make these strategies a reality by developing implementation plans, reducing greenhouse gases, and enabling sustainable product design processes. So we take a stance that really to achieve the kind of transition that companies need to undertake today, focusing on current compliance and best practice generally leads to the realm of incremental changes. And to make the transition we need as a society that's in line with the planetary boundaries in a 1.5 degree scenario, companies need to benchmark their performance against this absolute end goal to enable this transition. And a lot of times also involves reconsidering their product portfolios, and also embedding consideration of sustainability and circularity into their design processes to change the way that they work with development of products. And we think this is needed for companies to be able to stay ahead of the curve, and also future-proof against new developments and policy, and also to realize this transition in itself. So why do we bring everyone together for today's webinar? Well, as anyone working in sustainability knows these days, the policy landscape is moving fast in the EU with the EU Green Deal. A lot of the companies that we're working with, and probably you here today, are wondering, how is this going to affect them? What are the timelines? What could this really look like when it's implemented? And a lot of these details are very uncertain, and that's why we want to bring today some different perspectives around what this could look like. But also, we do know the end goals that we're trying to achieve, right? We know that we need no emissions of greenhouse gases by 2050, according to the European Green Deal, economic growth decoupled from resource use, and in this process, no person or no place left behind. So because we know that that's the end goal, all companies need to be part of this transition and have a focus on the end goal in achieving these grand plans. So to help us inform us on their opinions of this policy area. And so, well, first of all, we'll have joining us, and we're very pleased to have Jean-Pierre Schweitzer joining us. He's a senior policy officer for circular economy and product policy at the European Environmental Bureau, joining us here from Brussels today. And Jean-Pierre, of course, specializes in policy relating to sustainability, circular economy and products, and has previous experience at the Institute for European Environmental Policy, and also holds a master's degree in environmental policy from Humboldt University. And he will give us really the ins and outs of this policy area so that we can all be on the same page. So Jean-Pierre, please do take the screen.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for the introduction and for the invitation today. I'm just going to quickly bring up my presentation. Okay, so yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Really delighted to be here and speak to you about this important new area, new developing area of policy, which was kind of launched in March last year. Just to give you a bit more background on myself, working on circular economy and product policy at the EEB. If you don't know the EEB, it's the largest federation of environmental NGOs in Europe. And I'm closely following particularly product policy developments at the European level and working together with our members and partners across the EU to encourage more sustainable products to be put on the European market. And we've been closely following the developments in the context of the Sustainable Products Initiative. Michelle asked me to scare you today into thinking that eco-design means that you really have to make sustainable products as quickly as possible. Of course, I agree with her. I'm not very scary, so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do that, but I will try to at least explain to you what SBI and eco-design is about. I'll try to tell you a little bit about what eco-design looks like today, how it works, what's in the new package, so what we can expect in terms of the new legislation, and maybe give you some of my own reflections on the new proposals. So this is one of the first complicated slides I will show to you today, but it's rather simple, really. It just shows you that there are many different types of product policy which already exist at the European level today, and they impact different sectors of the economy and different life stages of products. So there is quite developed waste legislation, for example, so legislation which affects the end of life of some specific products like vehicles or batteries, or end of life electronics. We also have regulations on design, eco-design, which we're focusing on today. We have some requirements, although often voluntary ones, in terms of the EU eco label, which you might be familiar with, quite similar to the Nordics one, which might be more familiar with the audience here today. There are some, but very limited, fiscal and economic instruments. It's not really EU competence, like the VAT directive now gives some possibility for reductions related to circular economy activities. There's also very developed chemicals legislation. But overall, what I would say is, even though we have all of these different instruments, they are not really applied to different sectors of the economy in a comprehensive or holistic way. In some sectors, let's say home appliances and energy using products, we have a lot of legislation. And for other sectors of the economy, like textiles or furniture, there is very little European laws which apply. And I think this is the background of what has been proposed, because it's kind of going in a direction now where we are taking a more comprehensive approach. Just to zoom in a little bit on the Ecodesign Directive, which is existing European legislation particularly on energy using products. So this is something which already exists today. I think many of you maybe are familiar with the A to G label, which you see on home appliances like fridges and washing machines. This is the energy label framework, which is closely related to Ecodesign. And the way this works is it sets minimum requirements for energy efficiency in particular, but also some other environmental impacts related to products, in some cases chemicals, but also increasingly circular economy. In 2019, We had some proposals for minimum requirements for spare parts and also for disassembly and access to repair information for products like washing machines and lighting. The aim of Ecodesign is really to set a level playing field in the European market, because anyone who sells or imports or manufactures a product sold on the European market has to comply with these rules. So it really sets a minimum standard. Originally, the focus was really on energy efficiency. So it was about saving energy in the context of Europe's climate objectives, and particularly the energy efficiency directive, but also saving consumers energy, because there's a close link between how much energy your washing machine uses, for example, and how much it costs you in your energy bill. The same goes for lighting and other products. It also covers industrial products like fans and processors, which obviously have an impact on companies which use those products. The way that the requirements are set is on a rolling working plan, which is updated every 5 years or so. And this prioritizes the energy using products according to their energy use or their environmental impact. And this is just to give you the background on how Ecodesign is working today. Maybe a little bit, I will share the slide because I realize now this is very, very small and hard to read. But this just gives you a background on how the individual product requirements are set. So it's about a 3.5-year process, although sometimes it has taken longer than this. It sounds like a long time, but you must appreciate that once the requirements are in place, it's a regulation, so you have to comply with these rules to sell the product on the European market. An important point to make is that, and it really explains why I think legislators have taken the opportunity to broaden the scope of the legislation, which I'll come on to in a bit, to more types of products, not just energy using products, is how successful these rules have been in saving emissions and energy use. So this figure is just part of a report we published last year. And we estimate that about a third of the EU's emissions reductions needed to meet the 55% climate reduction target for 2030 will actually come from Ecodesign. So it's a huge chunk of the emissions reductions expected from European legislation. And this is particularly because it touches on some really high impact product groups, notably heating and cooling, but also lighting. And when you add this on top of many of the home appliances and industrial products which are covered, there is a huge energy use associated with these. And the efficiency gains made through the policies in the end add up to a huge amount of emissions. And I think already by 2020, the amount of energy saved was equivalent to the energy consumption of Italy. So it's really a huge amount of energy which has been saved through this policy. Now coming up to starting to update you on what's happening at the moment. So as Michelle already mentioned, this new area or developing area of product policy relates to the European Green Deal. Not in the Green Deal communication, but in the Circular Economy Action Plan published in March 2020, there was a commitment from the European Commission to do many things, but there was clearly these sentences that one thing they really wanted to do was make sustainable products, services, business models the norm. And the other thing was to make the Ecodesign framework applicable to the broadest range of products. So this is building on what I've already said. This is really a kind of a big development which we saw, because suddenly there was interest from legislators to apply this approach, which had been previously just focused on energy using products, to other kinds of products in the economy. And then this is kind of what we got in March 2022 this year. So the European Commission published a proposal. It's still a proposal. It's not the law yet, but for a new framework for products. In March, it wasn't actually just this that was published, but it was a series of documents and communications. The main part of this was the proposal on eco-design, so a revision of the eco-design directive, which I'd say the most important aspect of this was to broaden the scope and allow you to set eco-design requirements to not just energy using products, but other sectors of the economy. And it's very broad. I think the only exemptions they include are for food and maybe pharmaceuticals, and that's it, I think, within the proposal. They also made some proposals in the document called Empowering the Consumer for the Green Transition, which are more focused on reducing greenwashing and preventing obsolescence from the perspective of providing more information to consumers. They also published the strategy for textiles, which is another communication document, but particularly focused on the apparel and footwear sector. And in addition to this, there was a separate communication on the construction products sector. So this was a big package of proposals, several, I think over 1,000 pages of things to read through for people who are really eager to have a look. I'm sure Michelle will be able to share some links to the proposals. But I think today we're really going to focus on what was said about eco-design and how the product policy framework could work.
I'm sorry, Jean-Pierre, we're almost out of time now. Do you think, I know you have some good content about the timeline of what people can expect.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I didn't realize we were so short on time. I will
it flies by quickly.
Don't worry, I will skip straight away to the point on the timeline. It fits well with the presentation. So yeah, so I think the question is what's next? So as I said, it's only a proposal. The next step within the context of European legislative developments is a co-decision process. So both the Parliament and the Council will prepare their position on the proposal from the Commission. And there is currently an ongoing public consultation on this, open until the 22nd of June. But in both cases, what will happen is the Parliament will publish a report on the proposal, and so will the Council. And then there will be a negotiation process in trilogue to determine the final text for the document. In terms of a timeline, I think based on, there was recently the battery regulation, which was proposed, and this is ongoing, and it's taken around, over 2 years to develop the battery regulation. So I think it's reasonable that to prepare the new eco-design framework, it could take a similar amount of time, 2 to 3 years, I think is reasonable. And then in addition, as I said, it's roughly 3.5 years for a product specific requirement to be developed. But obviously these can be developed in parallel because in a work plan, you have several products being looked at in the same time. So it sounds like a lot of time, but it could mean that for many high impact product groups, notably textiles and the building sector, which are already being targeted, measures could be developed within the next 5 to 6 years. I hope that's been useful, and I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has, and looking forward to the panel debate.
Thanks so much, Jean-Pierre. I know we already have some questions coming in, so please do continue adding your questions in to the Q&A. And when we get to that, we will make sure to answer them. I know we have some questions about what does this framework with the kinds of products that this framework could apply to, or this potential regulation. So we will do those, or otherwise, Jean-Pierre, feel free to do reviews those as well as we go on. Great. So then now we're just going to move into our to introduce our panelists for today. And so joining us, we also have we want to bring to you our two panelists here, and really when we think of companies working with circular economy and eco-design, Philips is really one of the top of the list that we think of. So that's why we're really pleased to have here Thjis Maartens, who's the sustainability and circular economy lead at Philips. So not only does he help drive Philips' ambitious sustainability and circularity targets, but he's also leading a team that works consulting with other companies as well. And Thjis has also previously worked at Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute and has scaled this certification product program in Europe. So he really has a depth of knowledge in this field. And also we have us joining here, someone with a strong depth of knowledge in sustainable materials and product design and really the how of products and how they get made. And that's Mette Bak-Andersen. She's a designer, advisor, and researcher with over 13 years of experience working in sustainable design, both in Denmark and internationally. She's founded the Material Design Lab at Copenhagen School of Design and Technology, has a PhD in sustainable design and materials from the Royal Danish Academy, and has also authored a book on reintroducing materials for sustainable design. So we're so grateful to have these panelists here today. And we'll just start off with giving you each a few moments to just discuss how do you think that the proposed eco-design sustainable product regulation could affect your line of work? So Thjis, I'll let you start off.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle, and thanks for having me. Obviously, I won't spend too much time thanking you and the other panelists, but just go into the content straight away. The question is, what is the impact of a strategy? Of course, that depends a little bit on what your strategy is, right? I think generically speaking, so going a little bit top level on this question and then diving deeper in the next questions, I think, organizations who have invested in eco-design, circular economy, driving decision-making, reporting, but also claims generation in this space will be plucking the fruit currently of the invested time and effort in doing so. Others who are now entering this field and starting to feel pressured, as was mentioned by Jean-Pierre at the start of this call, scared perhaps. I think what is really important there is that it's a great time to step up, to re-evaluate existing strategies and do so in a convergent or at least let's say playing field that is a bit more equal than before. So whereas we were unsure a couple of years ago what regulation, consumer demand, or voluntary standard would be driving our need to optimize our portfolios and deliver on environmental sustainability, I think with this new directive coming out, things are quite clear. There's not a lot of more, let's say, forward-thinking standards available, meaning that to be compliant means that you're already moving the needle quite a bit, and I think the challenge in the coming years is being compliant rather than using sustainability as sort of this competitive advantage. So the bar has been set, and up to us as companies to deliver, and that requires a lot of data, a lot of collaboration inside of organizations and outside. But yeah, challenging time certainly.
Thanks for your reflections there, Thjis. And I think, when I think of maybe scared isn't really the word that I'd like to use, but rather, I see the understanding of, where we are with the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis. I feel scared, and it kind of gives me a little bit of relief to see that now with the circular economy package and where the policy areas at least moving in Europe, that kind of sense of urgency is starting to translate in the way that companies are addressing the way that they work with sustainability. And I think that's exactly what you said about it, setting a higher bar and putting everyone else on the same playing field is something that is really encouraging to see and essential. And I look forward to actually understanding a little bit more what that level playing field starts to look like. And I hope as a citizen, more than even a consultant, that really that level playing field is going to be much higher than what we see today.
Just maybe just one very short reflection on that. So
yeah.
I think just as a sustainability professional, but also as we, I think all are somewhat, at least we like to see of us as internal activists, this is helping us, right? So this is helping make the case for sustainability in a business context, and that's not always been easy. So from that perspective, very welcome direction.
Absolutely, I agree. It's nice to see that that it's making really the business case make sense, or we hope that it will be. And yes, then I suppose we, Jean-Pierre, do you have any reflections about how do you think this policy could impact company strategy and business models?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think one thing for sure is that what we should see is a move to not just thinking about emissions, but also materials, because I think we can expect, at least in the past, obviously the focus in Ecodesign was on energy efficiency, but I think it's more about the embedded emissions in the production processes. When you think about sectors like textiles, consumer electronics, also buildings, it's really about the embedded impact and the materials. So already starting to think about this perspective is quite important. I think there's also something easy that companies can do, just thinking about the process behind eco-design when the measures or the requirements are set. They are not reinventing the wheel. They are really reviewing what kind of sustainability criteria or requirements already exist. So often they will look at things like I mentioned already, the EU Eco Label or the Nordic Swan, and see, okay, what kind of requirements do they set there? And is it reasonable to set this as a minimum requirement at the European level? So companies could already have a look around them, see what's being done, see what the best available technology or performance is in their sector, and say, okay, can we do that? And is it reasonable in a certain timeline? So I think that's something I say easy, but it's something tangible that companies start to do.
Absolutely, and I completely agree with that. And I think that that's something we've been so grateful for in our work, that we've come across a lot of these preparatory studies, for example, that the EU has put out tremendous work looking into sustainability criteria for the development of electronics, and also they've done for the procurement of textiles, and all these resources are available for organizations to use, also setting repair guidelines for electronics as well. So I think that's also a wealth of knowledge to tap into, that's kind of a part of these policy developments. It's a really great resource, and sometimes the companies just can start using right away. And so then I think then Mette, for example, would you like to just perhaps give us a little bit of an introduction about how do you think this proposed regulation affects your work, and then also speak a bit to you're really engaged in product development processes and also working consulting companies. How do you see this policy area changing the way that products are developed from your experience? Oh, sorry, you're on mute, Mette.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, so I think from the way it's going to affect my work, I think that if this proposal is adopted in the way that we see it now, will make a big difference, because many of the companies that are working with sustainability and trying to make this transition to sustainable design and production, they are doing it not because they're forced to, because they're doing it, voluntarily. Like Jean-Pierre is saying, they're looking at the Eco Label or the Swan label and seeing what do their products need to meet to be classified as sustainable at the moment. But it also means that this is a minority. So a big majority of companies are not doing it this way. And until the sustainable product becomes the norm, I think some of the barriers that the pioneers, if you like, that they're facing, that they're meeting in the system, in infrastructure, on materials level, some of these barriers will not change until sustainable products have become the norm. So I think this is what really could make a big difference in speeding up things. Mm-hmm. So related to how I think this policy could impact the way products are being developed, well, I think the best way to answer this question is that if you look around, all of you who are listening right now, at the things that you have in the place where you're sitting, if you look around, you'll see furniture, you'll see clothing, you'll see you sitting in a building, you'll probably have electronics on your desk and lamps. If you look at all those man-made products that have been designed and manufactured, what we see is that, well, I bet, I can't see into your space, but I bet that very, very few of those actually comply with the sustainable product directive that we're looking at right now. And so I'm not saying this to sort of like get you all depressed or to say that this proposal is not is too ambitious, and because it isn't. But I'm just saying it because I think it visualizes the radical change of how we design and manufacture things, the kind of change that we are standing in front of, what we need to take on. It's quite a task. And it's frequently when I go to different debates, I see I meet a lot of academics who are very good at reading theoretical documents. And what I also, for instance, like this, it's not actually that difficult to read some of, for instance, like the Sustainable Product Directive. It makes it on a theoretical level, it's not difficult to understand, but because it's not difficult to understand because it's logic. I mean, like, of course, you need to design something so it can be disassembled, because if you don't, then how are you going to change one component with a spare part? Of course, you need to design something that it can be recycled, because if we don't, then how are we going to retrieve the materials and use them again in new products? But understanding this on a theoretical level is one thing. Actually implemented in practice is quite a different thing. Mm. And what I see is that many of the companies, the manufacturing companies, they don't have the knowledge. They don't have the knowledge on the sustainability, and frequently they don't have enough knowledge about materials and manufacturing in the design department. And this is a problem because these things that when we look at the criteria, they're all related to how the product is put together. And so when we have a design department that is very conceptual focused and makes great ideation, good storytelling, great forms, whatever, but leaves it up to some kind of technician or other people down the production chain to make the product sustainable, it becomes really difficult. Because what is also mentioned in this product directive is that most of the decisions that determines whether a product is going to be sustainable is actually decided in the design phase. So if designers don't know, then it's really, really difficult to get the product to be sustainable. You can't inject sustainability into a product that wasn't designed to be sustainable from the beginning. Mm-hmm. So this is one of the things that I'm seeing is that companies are really needing to change the way that they design things and their setup. So upgrade knowledge on how to work creatively with materials and production in the design department. And sometimes a lot of the bigger manufacturing companies who have in-house design departments, development departments, and manufacturing departments, they need to work together much more. So frequently it's a good idea to have people, technicians, and people from production going into the design phase and working with the designers. So these are sort of things that I can see that there will be ways in the way on a product level, the way we actually develop and design products.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I think it makes me feel really optimistic that, for example, in this, at least this draft regulation, when it's described in the press release, they're already talking about reducing that, 80% of the impact of developing products is so early in design phase, as you say, and hopefully this is going to create a shift to actually addressing that in the early stages to be able to make the changes that we need to make to enable this transition. Thjis, do you have anything else to add about how do you think this policy can impact the way products are developed from your experience, of course, at Philips and also Cradle previously and all of the work that you do?
Yeah, I think I do I have a lot to say, but I'll try to keep it short. Okay. I think just to build on Mette, indeed, so collaboration is key. It's a bit of a buzzword, but at the same time, what we experience when we try to work with our customers internally or externally on, sustainable product design, the department that's not in the room is at fault, right? So it's always whether if procurement is not part of the workshop, then it's procurement. If it's design or engineering, then it's them. And so you will always, you will need to work together to come to integrated solutions. Also, the 80% rule, so 80% of the environmental impact is defined by the design. True. If somebody can share the source of that information with me, by the way, I'd love to see it. I've never found it, but it's everywhere.
Me neither.
Everybody claims it.
I like it though.
Yeah, it's a great statement. Just if you can help me with the source, it would be really nice. Anyway, more contextually, I think what we need indeed is a big step up in technical competences, circular design, but also very much related to data management, the way we interact, especially on the data capability with our suppliers. So being able to retrieve the right information, get them to also provide quality data to us so that we can use that data in relevant tools, in relevant data models, to not just report at the company level on how we are performing, but also report at the business level, at the product level, and more importantly, perhaps help drive decision makings in R&D at very early stage innovation. So what will change, at least if it hasn't already changed, is that sustainability will be embedded in early stage innovation more and more, rather than being an afterthought. And for us, I think that's all quite a good thing. And in terms of the capability to execute on sustainability, what you will see is that this data-driven sustainability strategy and tactics, therefore we need to build up an entire data capability to be able to respond appropriately to the new directive. And that, we cannot just hire more sustainability professionals or email more spreadsheets. We'll need to do that in an integrated way to be able to also cut the opportunity cost of this new directive, right? So we can complain and say, this is ridiculous, we cannot deliver on this, or we can be smart about it. And I think, starting with the data capability to make informed decisions that help us create a little bit more desirable world for our children is where we need to start.
Absolutely. Thank you, Thjis. And I mean, I could completely agree. In our work too, we definitely see the need for more integrated data approaches and how much data is needed, but also unfortunately how many gaps there are in realizing more sustainable product development that could be realized with better data. But so I guess on that note, finally, we've already touched on that, but we'd like to just do a round about how each of you think the companies should prepare, just perhaps on a high level. I'm looking at the Q&A panel. I know we have lots of good questions here today, so I'm glad that we'll all be able to have a chance to answer those. So to start off with your general thoughts on what do you think companies should do to prepare, perhaps Jean-Pierre, would you like to start us off?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Michelle. I jotted down a few things which I thought they could start to look into in their products. So the first one is definitely value retention. So how can the longevity of products be increased? Well, obviously, as a business, you'll need to think about how do you also relate that to the business model. Do you move to a products as a service model, for example, if you have much longer lasting products? So this is something to be thought about. The other one is about data, which I think, Thjis, you mentioned rightly, because within the new legislation, there is the option to establish a digital product passport for any product or sector being covered. And I think more and more there will be data requirements about, what are the materials, what are the chemicals within products, what is the origin of the product, because in parallel to this, there is also legislation being developed on corporate social responsibility. So there will be more requirements about what the origins of products are. Another point is about physical testing, actually, because in the existing eco-design world, everything is really done, the requirements are set, and the performance is determined through physical testing of products. So I'm sure some companies are used to doing this kind of thing, but many will not be used to doing it. And this is something maybe to explore. What physical tests could you actually apply to the products we sell, and how would that test their performance, their durability, their efficiency? It's just things to think about. And the last one is about procurement, because there is also the option to set minimum procurement criteria, mandatory procurement criteria at the European level. So this is really powerful, because if you imagine all of a sudden any European municipality or public authority is required to set this criteria when they are purchasing a specific product, then all of a sudden you have a huge market open to you. So this is something to think about as a business, like what will the criteria they set at a mandatory level be? And this is something to think about.
Thanks for that, Jean-Pierre. And then perhaps now I'll pass over to Mette if you have some thoughts about what companies should do. I already mentioned working with improving their capacity and data handling. Is there anything else that comes to mind?
Well, I think definitely sort of like if you're starting working with sustainability, one of the things that I think that is, of course, you need to upgrade knowledge on sustainability, but often also it is aligning knowledge. Different people have very sort of different ideas about what sustainability means. And if you're going to work with it as a company, it means a lot to align, to create a way of speaking about sustainability, that you actually have a way of talking about strategy, talking about changes and so on. And then, so I think that there's a side to it that's education, that it really, there is to some degree lack of knowledge, but then also what we'll see is that companies will, when you start working with sustainability, what we see is that on a material level, it can be hard to get hold of pure enough materials. A little bit what Jean-Pierre was saying is that, you know, that for instance, like if we end up with a digital product passport, we really need to get more detailed information about materials, because when you're doing a product, it's limited what you can get on a materials data sheet. And it's also, material will never be better than it was first designed. At least it's very hard to make it so. So we really need to look at those materials. I could just see that there was a question from one of the listeners regarding recycled PET and sort of the whole plastic situation. And this is something that really needs to be dealt with, because, you know, it is an enormous amount of materials that we are using. And also when you start working with circular economy and products that need to be biodegraded or recycled, there's a huge issues regarding binders and finishes, that we end up stuffing all these plastic materials or plastic-based binders onto our wood and other natural materials, and this is a problem. So there's sort of like different areas where we see that it's challenging to work. So in general, regarding the you might design a perfect product, and then it turns out that the waste management system is not prepared to take it. So it's there's sort of like several levels of when you start working with it. It really is working, all the different areas of working sort of like in small steps ahead, and it's slow. And just to say regarding the 80%, I'm not sure where the 80% comes from, and I'm not sure whether it's 80% even, but I think that when you work with design and start working with sustainable design, well, you can go through the different criteria, and it's almost obvious that, of course, these things end up, it's something when you're designing the product that you will have to decide on. So I think that it's at least as a designer, it becomes quite obvious that these decisions, you know, are part of the design process.
Thank you, Mette. And it's just great to hear also regarding that 80% study. We actually just had a comment from Michael Søgaard Jørgensen, who's a professor at Aalborg University here in Copenhagen, who actually says there's a study from Toyota that claims that 70% of the impact is shaped in design. So maybe that's just one source that's helped contribute to that. But perhaps by the end of this webinar, we can crowdsource some good sources to help us make a more accurate to point to some more accurate literature on those numbers. But of course, I see that that's something that you experience in your day-to-day work with design, of course, in reality from an anecdotal perspective. But without further ado, Thjis, do you have any other final thoughts about how you think companies should prepare? I know you've mentioned a lot already on working with data and establishing systems to do so.
Yeah, let's zoom out a little bit from the sort of the technical solutions. So yes, we can support our businesses with circular design, data capabilities, sustainability roadmaps, etc. But I think what we sometimes forget is this: sustainability is basically typically should be treated as a major business transformation, similar to a digital transformation. And that means that when you zoom out, you know, first, you know, get your narrative straight, develop your story together with your internal and external stakeholders, a compelling story so that people can identify with that, but also engage your leaders. So as a second pillar, making sure that your formal leaders, but also informal leaders really have the ability to lead by example in this space. And that means, yes, sometimes data, but it could also mean preparing the right materials or creating the right frameworks, etc. finally, or not finally, I think also important is, engaging your employees from a very broad perspective, making sure that they're part of the journey, create your centers of excellence, create your communities of practice, make sure that people can connect on the topic of sustainability so that not everybody needs to invent the same wheel. And finally, of course, when you are doing well and you understand what is asked of you and you have your community engaged, embed sustainability in your systems. So don't create parallel systems to ramp up this sustainability effort, but make sure that you embed sustainability in existing systems and the way you currently work. Like what we say in Philips is that, sustainability doesn't need to be part of your job title to be able to contribute. And I think it's very important that every one of us is able to contribute to sustainability. And in that sense, we are redefining quality with this new directive. And that should be handled within the broader organization and not just by a bunch of sustainability experts. So I think it's encouragement for everybody to contribute.
Thanks so much for rounding that off on that note, Thjis. I think I couldn't agree more with at least our perspective of our work with Nordic sustainability. We're seeing this, rather than looking at sustainability and circularity as kind of a separate tooling or separate scoring, it's really integrating as part of project development processes and part of what is considered as quality of a product that is really where we can see where the differences lie. So I completely agree with you there.
Yeah, and to Mette's remark, maybe we should agree that it's 100% of the impact that's decided in design, right? So I just cannot have it that I don't have a source for the information I think it's on any European website as well. So
yeah. Well, we have some good sources coming in. So if you check, I think we've had another one shared on that note. So please do keep them coming. Any sources you have, add them into the chat. We love to see it. This is very effective crowdsourcing. We have so many good questions here today, and I'm trying to get an overview and keep up with them. I think you already thankfully started answering some of those, Jean-Pierre, about, I think a lot of our questions relate to what types of products are being covered. So we've had asking about industrial products and machinery, computer installations and gaming machines, electronic equipment used in the agriculture sector, the automotive industry. And how do you think that, how do you think that people can keep track of sort of what exactly are the types of products that are being covered and how to approach that? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, it's not easy to follow this. It's a question which I try to follow myself, and it takes some work to see which products are being covered. But the easiest way is to look at the Ecodesign work plan. So this, in the existing law, there is an Ecodesign work plan which defines which products are going to be examined, and they've said that the same approach will be continued for the future Sustainable Products Initiative. So there will be a work plan where they will say, okay, these products are the most important ones. And usually the way this work plan is defined is there is a study and they say, okay, these are the products with the biggest impact, whether it's materials or emissions, water use in the economy. So those are the ones we're going to target.
And
yeah, go on, sorry.
No, thank you. That provides a really good answer. And I mean, generally, as far as my understanding of EU policy is that people, the companies won't be caught completely without warning, that there'll be some warning that the products that's going to be applying to a certain type of products. So right now, this policy area is still very early stages, and it's helping us understand how companies should react and how they should adjust their course on strategies, but the details really just aren't there yet right now. Is that correct as you see it?
Exactly. And I mean, as I said, it's usually about a 3.5-year process, and there's what works quite well, I would say, in terms of European policy making processes, is there's actually quite a good stakeholder engagement process for eco-design, where in the existing products which have been looked at, industry, but also civil society organizations are readily involved and provide data and input. So it's something which is quite interactive, I would say.
Thanks so much. I think that's a really good answer. And we also had a question about what types of models and product processes could be used for collecting data. Could this be EcoVadis, bespoke systems? We talked a lot about how companies should improve their data collection. I think all of you had some thoughts on that today, but Do you have any suggestions on how companies might get started in these processes? Perhaps, Thjis, that's a question for you to start off with.
Yeah, it's very complex, hard to answer. I think what is important is to look at all of your environmental sustainability topics, so natural capital, circular economy, climate related topics. And I think what is important to understand that there's quite a big overlap between the data points needed to generate let's say, to generate insights on the metrics across these different topics. So which tool you choose, if that's the question, I think that very much depends on the type of use case you want to serve, whether it's a reporting at company level or R&D decision making at your business level or anything else. But if you want to do this appropriately, I'd suggest to really start first figuring out what are the key data points across the different domains of this directive and other environmental sustainability programs, whether they're voluntary standards or European regulations. Then start to see which are the right tools that I can try to work with to provide insights to the right metrics, and then see and then build your sort of integrated data model based upon that. It's quite an intense exercise, which should not be taken lightly, but yeah, happy also to provide more insights on how we deal with that offline, if that's interesting to anyone.
I'm sure it absolutely will be. It seems that this is an area definitely in demand these days, and a challenge for essentially all companies right now, at least that we're seeing as well. We had another question about that there is plenty, this person said that there's plenty of research and models available today for sustainable practices, but why is there difficulty for organizations to adopt these models? And what are some ways that, do companies need to do to build more awareness and create training programs internally to start adopting better knowledge and sustainable design? Perhaps, Mette, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that it's true that there are tons of different models, and frequently what we see is that they sort of when we talk about sustainability in a systems level, if we look at research, there's still quite a lot of debate about. Wouldn't say that we have reached some kind of conclusion. Circular economy is probably one of the most complete systems to date, and then we have the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, that also sort of gives an overview of what all the different things that are relevant for sustainability. But when we look on a product level, that we do start seeing consensus in research, and we do start seeing the same criteria. So of course, there's when you work on a systems level, a little bit what Thjis is saying is you need to work out overall, find out what is it that is important to your company. Because I think some of the things that I frequently see is that companies start working with reducing CO2 emissions, which is super important. You need to reduce, yeah. But in doing so, if you don't define what sustainability, what are the values of your company, what is it that you want to work with, then sometimes people end up destroying their product in the process of trying to find the most sustainable material. They suddenly change the design, so the design is not recognizable to the user. I don't know if you understand what I mean, but so I think that sort of you need to both work on systems level and on product level, and need to make sure that you have consistency from systems level all the way into product and material.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more how that overarching perspective is really needed. We also have a comment here, I think, about the eagerly anticipated digital product passports. People asking, is there more detailed information about this? For example, what would the format be, etc. I think that's the information that we all want to hear, really. Jean-Pierre, do you have any thoughts about that? Maybe to start us off, I think you all must have opinions about this. Anything that we see about the digital product passports that's coming out from the EU?
Yeah, definitely. So this is a new initiative. We don't really have any experience for this yet, apart from in the European batteries regulation, which is still being developed. I think the easiest thing to do is, I'm going to share a link actually, is have a look in the proposal on the Ecodesign, and I forgot exactly which article it is, but I will double check. And you can have a look at what the expected information requirements are for the digital product passport. I will do that 1 second. But please, if anyone else wants to add a bit more information on the product passport. But I think the main point is that we already have quite a few product databases at the European level. For example, in Ecodesign, we have EPREL, which is basically the platform for which companies who manufacture products with the energy label have to supply data on, for example, on the energy efficiency of products. And the idea was that there are so many databases on product information that it made sense to have kind of one access point for this data and have a standard data format. So I think this is the direction they want to go. But I think the specific data which will be required per product group is still to be defined.
Thank you for that background knowledge. And yes, that link is great. Mette, do you have any other additional comments on the digital product passport, and what do you think that it could look like, or some hopes for it that you might have if in its implementation?
No, I think it was the one thing I was looking forward to the most, which was not included this time, and I kind of expected it not to be, because it's really, really difficult to make. It's quite complex, but it would have been so great if it had been included now. But I think it's something that we've talked about digital product passport for years now, and I have not seen anything sort of. I mean, there's discussions about how will you mark the products, but it's the thing is that what we often see, and what is also sort of like when we have, even though we are trying to make this transition to circular economy, many manufacturing companies are still only related to sort of like, maybe they are parts manufacturer, product manufacturer, and then they sell to retail. But they actually have the knowledge about how to repair, how to maintain, and how to recycle the product. But we end up giving all the responsibility to the user. So sometimes how we need to either get the companies involved in engaging more in those circles, or we need to give the information with the product to all the people who are going to handle it down the line. So that's the idea of the product passport. And I hope to see it soon. I think that's the only thing I can say.
I agree. I think it'll be fantastic, absolutely, if it is realized how we imagine it. Thjis, do you have any thoughts about the likelihood of it becoming a reality, or your thoughts around its implementation, at least from your perspective in your work?
No, I don't have too much information. I can only say that I think in terms of dynamics, I hope it helps us, focus on becoming better companies rather than better stories. This is a transparency tool. So being a better company rather than spinning a better story is key in this entire sustainability effort, and a product passport will help in that. I've seen the dynamics around the buildings as material banks discussion a couple of years back, where we saw similar attempts. I think, particular when it comes to cross-industry efforts, maybe something that it could solve is problems around data interpretability. And we always think that environmental sustainability is great, or sort of these directives are great. Because it helps us to create this level playing field that we mentioned earlier, but there's a lot of interpretation and a level of freedom for interpretation still when it comes to environmental sustainability. And I think digital product passport will help in terms of transparency and comparability when it comes to generating claims and communicating between different layers of your value chain. But details and wishes, no, I think overall it's a good dynamic, but I'm not too familiar with the concept as it currently stands.
Thank you. And I think just perhaps to round us off here, I mean, we had a question about what aspects we think of the current Ecodesign proposal is lacking, but I'd also like to say maybe which ones are the most exciting, to round us off on a positive note. So perhaps we'll just start off, if you can each give a few words. Jean-Pierre, perhaps you can start.
Yeah, thanks for this question. And I want to kind of draw in some of the other questions, because I saw that someone asked a question about fast fashion as well. And there was also a question about the kind of limitations of design. And I think this would be my main critical point, actually. I mean, we've said 80% of the impact of a product is defined at the design stage. Whether or not this is true, we've got all of the references now. But I think when we're thinking about the planetary boundaries, which you mentioned at the beginning, Michelle, it doesn't matter what the impact of one product is. It matters what the impact of all the products are. And even if we have a perfectly designed, repairable, refurbished smartphone, if we have too many of them, we're going to overshoot planetary boundaries. And I think this is really the big limit of the eco-design approach, because we can design everything perfectly, but if we have too much, then we don't get where we want to go. And I think this is where much more work needs to be done at the European level, because it's about consumption, what our overall footprint is, not just the footprint of one product, not just the life cycle analysis of this packaging versus the other one. It's about what's the overall impact of a sector or the economy, where a lot of work needs to be done. Regarding the exciting points, I really think that still, regardless of what I've just said, that the fact that we can now, or we soon will be able to set minimum requirements for all sectors of the economy, as we've been able to do for energy products, is a big opportunity, and it really needs to be seized. And it's great to see a lot of interest from brands and companies here, and I'm sure that a lot of good can be done about this in terms of making things last longer, more durable, and also supporting local businesses producing good quality products. So I'm glad to learn from everyone and hear what everyone has to say today.
Thank you so much, Jean-Pierre. And Mette, perhaps you just have a sentence to describe what you're most excited to look forward to before we round off the day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of agree with Jean-Pierre that definitely that one of the things that is difficult with this is that it's as long as we base things on growth on physical goods, it's difficult. You know, we need to try and to look at different models. I think that one of the things though that I'm missing and is for bigger focus on the bioeconomy. There's really a need to look much greater detail into how we work with circular economy on the bio level, on the bio side. So this is one of the things I would like to focus on. And then I'm hoping, I think what is going to be really interesting to see is what product categories are going to be affected. We'll see this by the end of the year, and I hope it's going to be, you know, broad.
Thank you so much, Mette. And some final words from you, Thjis, to round us off from today, something that you're looking forward to or what you hope to see?
Yeah, finding each other and working on these challenges, right? So working on them together with a little bit more direction than before. Let's close over that, but very eager to come close together. This is somewhat of a pre-competitive space, so it's for the good of us all. So sharing information, being able to accelerate this movement to a better world is what I look forward to.
Thank you so much, Thjis and Mette and Jean-Pierre, for joining us today and sharing all these fantastic insights. It's been such a treat to talk to you. And thank you everyone for joining here today and listening in. I hope I can speak on behalf of any of our speakers today. I'm sure they'd be absolutely happy to continue the conversation if you have any questions for them or for me. And please do reach out if so. And otherwise, hope you have a fantastic day. So thank you so much, everyone. And goodbye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.